It is the Friday night. We are in the Tempest on Tide Barn Street. We are, as ever, delighted to be with Erdinger. We're also delighted, Rob, to be with Wataru Endo. He is our new hero. He is our new holding midfielder of choice. The manager has very aggressively backed him today in a number of different ways. I think if he gets clearance, I think he might start. But first and foremost, are you glad he's on board now? It's been quite the journey with you since...
I have been on quite the journey with
Quite the journey since Wednesday night.
From being like, too cynical. I just think it felt like, in the moment, symbolically, it felt like a shitty postscript to the Caicedo Lavia debacle, didn't it? It felt like, so we've gone from the top of the, to use a Klopp typeism, from the top of the mountain to like getting a sort of a C grade signing is what it superficially felt like. But the more you sort of allow yourself to absorb it, it's really quite an exciting one. And obviously, I caveat it with, I can talk myself into anything, right? As a supporter, as we all can. Right?
Well, we should be able to.
And you know what? It's been ever thus, so I'm not going to stop now. And I have taught myself into being genuinely excited by it. I just stylistically looks exactly what we want. It'd be funny if he's rubbish and he gives away the ball 3 times in the first half hour in his debut against Bournemouth, for example. That would be funny stroke devastating. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to be just fine. Yeah, I don't know, he seems to tick every box you can imagine. We talked about just beforehand about what's his true value, because if you take away the 1 year left and the fact that he's 30 and there's no English league tax on him, metaphorical tax on him, maybe he would have been a 45 million euro footballer if he'd been 25 and had 3 years left. And we'd all have gone, I've never heard of him, but 45 million, he must be good. I mean, I must admit, I barely heard a check to Corey, and now he's 70 million. I'm desperate for us to sign him. And all the other lads I never heard of this summer that I'm desperate for still to sign. So, he's clearly a very good player. Let's see what we get. Let's see how he gets on then.
Steve, with it just seems to me it all feels... and the profile, and it all just feels remarkably sensible, and he feels remarkably sensible. I think that's the thing I've most enjoyed from all the little bits that we've done on the Anfield Wrap, is a load of people saying he's a clever footballer, and he works things out, and he's able to do this list of things, and all of them are things I would quite Liverpool to at the very least have the option to have in the middle of the park, and that's why I'm pleased with it. I don't think it should be the end of Liverpool's business. I want to be crystal clear about that. I'd be all right with it maybe being the end of the midfield business to an extent, which we'll come on to, but I'm very into the idea of all the things that he can just offer and bring straight away from day one, if that day one is tomorrow.
Yeah, I think all of the things that you hear people talking about, leadership, desire, the fact that it's a huge move for him. He really wants to come and play for Liverpool. He's also got lots of experience, captaincy experience. We've lost, and I think in lots of ways willingly, but maybe slightly too willingly, lost an awful lot of experience from midfield with losing Fabinho, Henderson, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita as well. Players. Firmino's experience has gone out of the door as well. Liverpool, we want them to be signing players of a different age profile, but we probably need them to be bringing in someone who's got some of that calm-headed. Liverpool looked lots of things against Chelsea, but one thing they looked a little bit at times was maybe slightly naive, maybe slightly unable to just solve their problems on the pitch. Some of that's down to, I think, someone like, for example, Alexis McAllister is the definition of a problem solver, and that will all come for them. But if he can come in and help with that blend, he can start fast. He can play some of the tough games through the winter when you're looking at game after game after game, and he's there and is a reliable figure. People invoked all kinds of signings when they said this feels like one, and probably the best one that I thought was Clavan, and that seemed to me like a real solution signing that doesn't have to be for the very, very long term, but might be for a longer term than you think. And for right now, it seems to make loads of sense.
One of the things that it strikes me about it, Steve, is the way in which it's described, the way in which he's described, and I do say this with a level of irony, is it feels like a proper football man signing. It feels like that old sort of style of, right, there's this list of things you've got, and all the way through, what's been frustrating me with the chat around us is I feel like we've got so much of the shiny stuff, the stuff that's so hard to get. Yeah. We've got that in spades, and most football teams never get near it. Most football clubs don't even get to look at 25% of what we get to look at. We just needed some of the proper football men stuff, and I think it would have helped against Chelsea. I think it would have helped McAllister against Chelsea. I thought McAllister's biggest issue against Chelsea was that McAllister couldn't pass to McAllister. But I think that sort of those old traditional values aspects, it's good to have some of it around the place when you've got all the other stuff.
Yeah, you know, you've got everyone from the goalkeeper through. You know, the superstar quality, even if they're not all superstars. Even someone like Curtis Jones, who we hope is on that trajectory. You know, but they've got world-class ability at times. You know, and I think timing's everything because lots of people were full of admiration for Japan in the World Cup back in November, and had we signed him off the back of that, everyone would have gone, that's a really shrewd bit of business, great bit of business. We're really excited. And you know, people have fairly said, you know, had we signed him in June and it felt like it was all part of a master plan, but you just don't know how these things work, you know, and have Liverpool been working on this for a while? We don't really know, but it's not like they've suddenly pulled a name out of a hat and they didn't know who he was and what he could bring. And you know, the sort of the suggestion that he's entirely an unknown footballer. I mean, he's not, is he? By any means. It just was a new name. It's just that it was a new name to us, you know. And the age is the difference with, say, someone like Caicedo. But Caicedo was an unknown name until very, very recently. And you know, I think people have just taken a little bit of time to live with it and grow into the idea of him being part of what we're going to do. But if you're not excited by Liverpool transfers, you know, almost whoever it is, and then it's probably not for you anymore. You know, like who isn't excited by signing a new player, and then thinking what do we do next?
Who's his Premier League equivalent, do you think? Sorry to cut across you.
God knows.
Is it Polina? I mean, you know, not obviously literally, but you know, status. What, in as much as someone in Germany they've signed who from England?
So,
you know what I mean?
There's a
Douglas Luiz maybe. I mean, I know he had a more illustrious sort of beginning to his career.
John McGinn maybe. Is that a mad thing to say?
It's not that mad. It's different parts of the pitch, but it's not that mad a thing to say.
Yeah, but status is what I mean. Stature.
Thomas Souček maybe.
Maybe, but again, I'm trying to think of that.
Yeah,
I
was trying to think sort of position and sort of signing from somewhere like that. Like in terms of profile of his history, there's a lot of, well, he didn't play outside of Belgium until he was 26 and he didn't get there till he was 24 or whatever.
Well, say Bayern signed someone.
Karim Matoma went to Brighton and doesn't play for Brighton until he's 24.
No.
Like,
he's fucking brilliant.
If you sign Matoma now, you wouldn't be going, hang on, why was he not playing in a top league earlier? Because you sort of, you see, like there's a...
Well, the manager talks about that today, interestingly.
He's 22,000 career minutes. Fabinho was 37,000. That's the thick end of 4 seasons.
Yeah.
4 seasons, and he's slightly older than him. I think we're going to have to sort of start moving away from the concept of just looking at someone's date of birth on Wikipedia.
There's also
and going a bit more into it. Sorry.
The thing about, you know, why hasn't he played for X club before? But I think you ignore the fact that some footballers are less guided by entirely the pursuit of money, and B, what their agent tells them to do. And perhaps he's just been
Japanese.
You know, I don't think for a minute that Endo hasn't had the opportunity perhaps to go elsewhere, and has largely been quite happy. You know, and I think that Liverpool have benefited from that, from footballers, you know, from Salah downwards really, who've been pretty happy with where they are. And you know, at various times
you go. Cultural prejudice as well plays in that. Some people say, like, Brazilians are always going to be more fashionable. Even to in learned scouts than lads from Asia. That's changing with every passing year, but you know he's been around for a while. I imagine it being harder for him to get a gig at a European club when he was 22 than a young Brazilian of the same status. You know, that's what I'm saying.
European teams, by and large, aren't looking at the J League, are they?
But again, you know, back to the agents. That, you know, the connections between agents and you know, a flow of Brazilian talent. There probably isn't quite that pipeline there with with Japanese, which in many ways is probably a positive thing for Japanese professional footballers, because they get a little bit more autonomy over what they do, and if they quite like where they live and the lifestyle they've got and the club they play for, they might stay there.
Yeah. There's something else as well, though, also about playing intense games. That's not to say that Stuttgart haven't played intense games or intense seasons. I mean, he scored a late winner in a relegation decider, Phil, to keep them up. But for me, there's something in the idea that if you are, forget even the nature of the amount of the minutes a footballer plays, there's something in the nature of those minutes. Like if you are absolutely at the business end, repeatedly over and over again. I mean, you know, we've long said one of the things that I think has knackered Liverpool players is the last 10 games of a season, they're fighting for everything. And every game absolutely matters enormously, whereas the last 10 games of most professional footballers in any league season is a bit of a, well, we're all right now, and we just sort of play out from here. And I think that there's something in so many Liverpool players have had so many intense minutes, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, like a 38-game season for Leicester, obviously excluding last season, for example, but Leicester over the last 3 or 4 seasons wasn't like a 38-game season at Liverpool or Manchester City, or, you know, the intensity just wasn't there. There's games where you can probably, if you're losing 4-0, you're allowed to switch off and run that little bit less, or maybe you're winning 3-0 because that's how the variance in these teams' games happens. That's just what they can do, and I think it's interesting to see some of these players will really step up when you put them with better players. Like, they don't just... It's one of the things that...
But it can go the other way, though, Phil.
Oh, absolutely.
It can go the other way,
100%.
My biggest concern is that it does go the other way.
100%, I agree with you completely. Like, that's the things that... When everyone's going, oh, there's this statistic, there's that statistic, there's the other statistic, that's one of the things that it can't possibly measure because it is an unknown. You just don't know what he's going to do. He could up his game and he could go, oh, hang on, I'm not up to standard of these, and it could get involved with him. I watching that Chelsea game last week, I didn't think our need was particularly complex in terms of how that game was going.
I agree with that.
The ball was going up in the air, second half, and it was dropping to a Chelsea player every single time. All we needed to do was win, probably... it felt like it was 80% of them were dropping to Chelsea players. If we get that up to 50, we're able to relieve the pressure on the defence. We get a lot higher up the pitch.
With a look after it a bit better, one more defensive player.
Yeah, exactly. Klopp said in his press conference that the 35% possession was, I think he called it a disgrace or terrible or something. He wasn't happy. I can't quite remember what he said about it. But even if you were able to get that up to 42, getting up to 42 probably then gets it up a little bit further because you're sort of controlling things a bit better, you're getting higher up the pitch, you're making it easier for you to defend, and I thought we defended reasonably well, but you don't want to be on the back foot for that long, and it doesn't feel like it was particularly complex to bring in someone to get us off the back foot in that particular situation.
We were passive, that was the problem in the second half.
It was just players who didn't really have it as their sort of prominent skill set to be about reclaiming second balls, really. Their
legs are gone, and they didn't have a default muscle memory to go and win football. I mean, I thought McAllister, everyone raved about his first half performance, and rightly so, but he was one of those who was gone in the second. Yeah. Interestingly, of the starters, the only one who seemed to have the fitness, and the mitigation is it's an extended pre-season when you play the first game to a degree.
Both teams, I thought they were knackered on 70.
Yeah, but they had a certain momentum that the crowd were giving them legs, I have to say, at that stage. In the ground, it felt to me...
They didn't have a shot after 75.
Yeah. No.
I thought it was...
But interestingly, the only one of ours, I thought, of the starters who maintained any kind of energy. Yes, by a mile. His natural fitness was a major plus.
I think he might have won one of the lactate tests, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yeah. He was...
And because I think he basically told his number to Trent, and Trent looked at him like an alien that turned up.
He was very, very good.
Yeah,
I was really delighted with that. It's his strength. He made some little quip in one of his many interviews he's given. He's given a lot of interviews for a new signing across the spectrum about he thinks he could do a job at 6, and nobody picked him up. And funny enough, having watched his YouTubes early on, I thought, there's something I can see about you. You quarterbacky about you. You've got such a passing range. Not that he'd be a natural one, and it's the way he's a unit quietly, Szoboszlai, and he can put his body in the way of people. I'm not suggesting he's the solution. In fact, I want him the other end of the pitch, but it's the way he uses his body. What I'm saying in a long-winded way is he's a much stronger defensive force than I thought he was from just watching the pre-season games.
I thought he was great. And
was it a real step up from him from a pre-season? Because his pre-season was such a level that I was like, I'm not sure I'm playing him at Chelsea.
Yeah, I thought that. I wasn't actually picking him.
So to play him and then for him to be so good and so strong at the end was really encouraging.
You're picking him tomorrow?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Who else are you picking?
Are we saying Jones is out?
It looks like Jones is out. And he's intimated that Alcantara
He's not available
out the game as well.
Why is Jones out? He
He's
missed
got a
training.
knock on his ankle, I think.
Little
It's
ankle
not bad. It's not bad. It's just, I think he was described as a doubt yesterday, wasn't he?
Curtis's knocks and end up in.
I think it's a real shame Curtis is out, because I was picking Curtis for certain.
I think I'm probably going. I think I'll probably do Nunes for Jota, and that's the only change I'm making.
Really?
Definitely do that. I go Diaz, Nunes, Salah, front three.
Yeah, I think I'll do that as well.
You're both picking Gakpo?
I just think.
No,
I
not.
would,
If the Japanese boy's available, no.
If he's there, then I would probably play him instead of Gakpo. But I think my sort of thing with Gakpo is where he played last weekend. I don't really want to see him in that kind of game. Like, I would have probably played him instead of Jota and brought another midfielder in. But in a home game like this, I think that's probably where he should be playing. Like, I almost think he should be at the apex of a midfield in home games and the bottom of a forward line in big away games. Like, it feels like there's a role for him that changes with the opposition.
So this is my only game against a side that will likely finish in the bottom 10 where I disagree.
Really?
And the reason why is because I think we will underrate how intense these will be and how much their manager will be absolutely primed for this. He won last season at Barcelona. He's won at Madrid in the past. He will have a plan as to what we do against the big teams. And most of the time, I'm absolutely fine. I don't want, so I would start Diaz, Gakpo and Salah. And this is the only home game against the bottom 10 side where I think about that. Because I think you need to be really clean in how you look after it against these. Because that's entirely what they're built on, winning it back and then trying to dominate it from there and finding ways to get about your high. This is a bit like playing Bielsa's Leeds, and I think you've got no hiding places in amongst that. That's what I think.
My worry with that is that you end up with two players who want to play deeper than you want, which is possibly is a product of what you're saying, I guess. But it's just
but what I also think about that is that I think you remember that you can, for instance, and I'd like everyone to remember, you know, we all love the manager at the minute. I thought he was great in the press conference today, but for instance, you can make a change at half time. Yeah. And you can make a change on 60. What would you do? If he's available, would you play the new lad even though he's only had one session?
Yeah.
So would I.
I just think you look ahead at the games coming up, and you think none of them are ideal, I think, to throw him into. This is the most ideal game to put him into. With, you know, all the things that we think Liverpool were lacking at Chelsea are what he can provide. He can make a case for himself, certainly, to start at Newcastle.
Absolutely.
By performing in this game. To be honest, I think there's by performing competently in this game, I'd say, because I think Liverpool, broadly speaking, will just be seeking competence in that role. So yeah, I would absolutely start him. You know, looking at the forward line, thinking about Nunes, I feel like it's almost exactly the opposite in that I think he starts at Newcastle because it's mad in that, you know, literally just played well there last season and scored. But you know, for me, I'm as basic as that. I'll go for that.
I think he's also what Kieran Trippier and Fabian Schär do not want to know about. They do not want any business.
Whereas
with that.
Also, you're playing on the counter more.
A teeny bit more, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in for Gakpo, Salah, Diaz as the front three, and then Endo, Szoboszlai and McAllister as your midfield, and I'm looking forward to watching that, and you know, wherever Trent's playing, which is fine. I think that's pretty much where I'd land.
With the team that you said, what are you doing as your midfield?
So I would, in an ideal world...
Are you saying that Endo... But if Endo's not there...
If Endo's not there, then I would actually go with McAllister, Szoboszlai, Elliott.
Okay.
And you're just abandoning the idea of six.
So I would... We're not quite abandoning it like McAllister does the 60 bits when we need to, but I feel...
defensive output's better than a lot of people think.
I'm absolutely fine with it, and I very rarely sort of advocate for Elliott, but I feel, first and foremost, I thought both him and Jones made a real difference when they came on against Chelsea. Jones isn't available, and I think the idea, you know, he scores against them last season at home. Again, you feel like it's simplistic, but I do think it helps and it matters. But also, this is back to the... I think this is going to be like playing Bielsa's Leeds. We haven't established yet entirely what they're like. No one's watched them. Last weekend they played at 3 o'clock, but they play really intense, really high press, a lot of man-to-man stuff.
What was the result?
And I think they drew 1-1 with West Ham. And I think there's a lot, but by the way, they had 63% possession versus West Ham's 37%.
That's so David Moyes.
It is, but the idea of they put in more pressures than West Ham. They have more, and they have more pressure regains than West Ham haven't had that number of that much possession, if you see what I mean.
Impressive.
So yeah, Yeah, but the flip side of that though is that every strength's a weakness. So if they're gonna try to absolutely hammer you around that, you want your players who can take it away from someone with a touch and find the space and burst into it.
Which is what Elliott was doing again and again against Chelsea. And I think also your other earlier argument, kind of bringing it back to what I was saying, is where's your first Elliott League start of the season when you're looking at these games?
Completely.
And there needs to be some, because they rate him incredibly highly. They think he's fantastic, and so do I. So I want him to be playing games. I also want Núñez to be playing games because I think his ceiling's so high. You know, there's lots of variables at the minute. There's lots of moving parts for Liverpool. It's really interesting and quite exciting. It should be exciting, provided you just get the results in the meantime as well. Just how you time each player's run at the minute.
The interesting thing is the depth of the squad beyond the omissions, which is all we seem to be able to focus on as fans, in the sixth position. Beyond that, and the defensive positions in the front 4 to 5 positions, it's an embarrassment of riches. And actually, you can perm any four from 7 or 8,
you
and you're not going to make about
starting in the front 3, and there's something else mad going on somewhere else, and I'm like,
you're not going to make a wrong decision, quite frankly, out of. In those positions.
But I'll ask you just said there about sort of the deficiencies in the number 6 position. I'm going to ask each of you, would you do another midfielder? Do you think they'll do another midfielder, and would you do another midfielder?
I would, yeah.
Who would you do?
I think I'd do Gravenberch now. I think there is a real lack of options at that position in terms of
so Gravenberch to come in and play number 6 though. Gravenberch to come in and play and work and becoming a number 6.
Yeah, I'm surprised that as many people think he's like an aggressive front-footed number 8 as they think. I thought he was a sort of. In my head, he was deeper. I don't know if I'm wrong or.
You're not wrong.
I thought. I also think he's big. His defensive work seems to be good. He looks like that would more likely for me be his best position over time, because I think he's one of those where he's quite tall, isn't he? So you do wonder. You don't get many lads who are really tall, sort of as front-footed midfielders these days, do you?
Do you think they'll do another one, and who would you do?
I almost entirely agree with Phil there. I think Gravenberch. Look, I'd be very pleased if I heard that they'd lumped 60 on Czech Doucouré, mainly because of the price.
The Gravenberch fee I thought was interesting. It was mooted today, wasn't it?
Well,
like 25 million euros.
That's all they paid. Pretty much all they paid for him.
They paid that for him, and they've not played him, so they'd have a nerve asking more. But yeah, I think
it's on big wedge as well.
Yeah,
I think it's a sort of 33 million package kind of feel to it. If they will let him go. The reason he's right is, Neil, you said something the other day about, well, if we went all in for someone like a Czech Doucouré at, say, 60 million, then he's the chosen one, the plan A for the next 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Whereas I think you can gamble, if you're paying 25 to 30, you bought 2 lads at 20 and 30, you've done the sort of the bargain basement-ish solution. Experienced lad who's much better than his fee suggests, the inexperienced lad who's mouldable in Gravenberch, who may or may not be better than his experience suggests, and you've still got room, if neither of them work out or one of them doesn't work out, to still make a big move next summer. I think it's a good holding position, which has potential massive upside as well. So Gravenberch makes all the sense in the world to me.
That's the thing with me, when you look at the options of players who are available at the minute, it would be very easy to spend 50 million quid on someone who wasn't good enough, and then you spent 50 million quid and you've invested years worth of wages in someone, and very quickly down the line you're like, hang on, we need to do something here. So I think we've obviously, one of the things we've been very interested in is getting the best. We've obviously we agreed the British transfer record last week. We've clearly sniffing around Tchouaméni, and it's more that it's not that we won't do it, it's that
he won't
and Real Madrid won't, which is fair enough.
He started for them,
exactly.
But
once you get below that, the options just really dry up, and you're sort of in the position where
they don't excite you.
Exactly. It is 50 million quid for Palhinha, for example. Like, I'm sure he's fine, but I'm not looking at him going, well, we must have him. He'd be amazing.
Gravenberch is potentially something of a bargain in this market, given, and it's only coming about because Bayern have not played him. His profile is he doesn't profile less impressively than a Thuram or a Kone or even, as you say, a Palhinha. It's
pre the Bayern move. He was in fashion, if you like. He was someone that everyone who got really.
So
excited.
would you do him as well?
He was the big thing out of Ajax.
probably, post Caicedo, when it became clear. Well, firstly, it became clear that Lavia wasn't going to come, but also that Lavia didn't make any sense in that for us. If we'd signed Lavia and then we're throwing a 19-year-old in to start number 6, even against Bournemouth, you'd almost be, it's almost like it's so different to starting the captain of his country who's 30, which we're talking about, and what it means for them if it doesn't go well for them for a while. The Endo will play more than Lavia probably would have, certainly in the first few months of the season, and Gravenberch will play even more than either of them probably would do. So, just in that, what we need right now, plus the ceiling is there, plus the links with Gakpo, Van Dijk, it all feels like the pieces fit together really well there. Apart from the fact that I suppose you have to persuade the player that it's the right move.
Given his trajectory,
he can't get an inkling of what you're saying, which is the idea that we'll wait until someone else comes along, which I don't think we are, because I think he's got a higher ceiling than that.
Okay, I'd do Trindade. That is still my position. I would still do Trindade rather than Gravenberch. I maybe even just do it for January. But that's the way in which it goes. Some of us are more patient than others. Speaking of which, thank you very much to Rob. Phil and Steve, it's Friday night with Erdinger. It's been a pleasure. See you later.
And Erdinger, please. Stop! Don't forget the best bit.